So hello everyone, it's really nice to see you today, and we're really happy to be again in Maribor, but this time virtually. Last time was much better when we were in person in your beautiful town. But we will wait for some better times and then we'll come again. So of course you can come and visit Zagreb. We have Dan e-učenja, a day of e-learning. We have Moodle that you can join, and we will be happy if you can come and join us. Some of you already been here and we had a great time. So Tea and I will talk today about some of the activities that can help you make formative assessment through Moodle. So we work at E-learning Centre, like Miro said, and 5 days ago we celebrated our 14th anniversary. So in 4 years we can drink alcohol. Yay for us. That's great. We have a great number of teachers, a great number of e-courses during this year, and we get some experience in Moodle activities and Moodle resources and all kinds of things that teacher came up with to make this teaching and learning for their students more interactive, more difficult, more unusual, etc., etc. So today we'll try to show you some of the things that we learned from them, because we don't do teaching, we're just helping teachers to do their work, but still we learn from them and we use their experience to get that information to other teachers and help them be even better at their own work. So we'll start today with lesson, and then after the lesson, Tea will give you some information about how to use rubrics in an assignment activity in Moodle. We can only show you things today like a presentation, but it's not going to be a real workshop because there is not enough time for you to work with us, but you can work along with us. So you can open your lesson if you have a Moodle of any kind and go through the settings that we show you today. If you have any questions, you can ask us. Or you can wait until the presentation is over, or even if you have any kind of problem with lesson or rubrics, you can contact us later at University Center and we'll try to help you. I will now share my screen. Just a second. Okay, I think that you need to see right now this demo system. Do you see it? Yes. Okay.
Yes, everything is perfect.
Okay, great. I just wanted to show you this this site because you can access it also, and it's really great because you can access it as a teacher and as a student if you use this user accounts and username. So you have it is in Croatia, but I think that you will manage this far, and then you can make your own lesson as a teacher. Then go to the other browser and log in yourself as a student and see what you have done and what does that lesson looks like when you're a student. In that case, you can easily see what your students will see, what will be able to do, and how you can grade them in a way that you really want to. So this is the site that you can use from Slovenia with this local user account, and you can log in as a teacher and a student. And I think it's really, really useful sometimes. So I will now stop my camera so that I can focus on my presentation. And now I will start with, okay. So instead of giving you a PowerPoint presentation, we decided that we will give you, I'm missing the word, I'm sorry, it's still morning. we will give you a lesson right away. So we'll talk about lesson in a lesson. I prepared for you this really simple one so that you can see what's the basic settings you can use to get a lesson done. But later I will show you how you can make this lesson even more difficult and more interactive for your students. As you can see, it's text. It's a usual content that you use for teaching materials. And at the bottom, you have 2 buttons. The number of buttons is not limited. You can have as much as you want to. But I chose 2. And it's up to you how you will name these buttons. So I said previous page and next page, but later we will see how you can give your own text. So first of all, why should you use the lesson? This is really, really a great activity that you can use for self-evaluation, for self-learning, for formative assessment, for individual path that you want your students to go through. You can create your adaptive teaching and learning path with this. What is great that you can combine teaching materials with quiz, with some questions. And that's how you can make some breaks. So if you have a great number of teaching materials, a great number of pages with teaching materials, you can break them in parts. And you can break them with some questions, so you know that your students are reading carefully, that they understand what they have read, and that they pay attention to those materials, not just look at them and listen to music in the background and never understood anything or remember anything. With these questions, you make sure that they will pay attention to what they read. You have another of these reasons listed here. What kind of pages can you make? So you usually will use a content page. This is what the content page looks like with text only. Of course, you can make some more interactive pages, like giving them a video, giving them a picture, giving them an audio file, etc., etc. Of course, you can make even H5P. As I understood, you will be given some presentation later about this interactive tool, which is really, really great. And it's not that hard to use. So you don't have to know any programming, but just make some content very simply. So you will use the content page, and you will use a question page. Question page allows you to make some questions. You have 6 or 7 kinds of questions that you can use in a lesson. You can't use questions that you made for the quizzes in Moodle. People usually ask us why we cannot share that database, but it's not connected. So lesson has questions on their own, separate from Moodle quizzes. Okay, as you can see now, I have only one button, next page. So it's not really smart for me to do this, because I cannot go back unless I do browser arrows. So I can go to next page, but before that, you see here that you can import some questions, add a cluster. Okay, so there is a possibility that you use your quizzes database questions if you export them in some of these formats and you import them here. But please be very careful, because it's not working always perfectly. So yes, you can do some of these things, but not everything. So be careful, and it's you will see what you can do depending on what kind of Moodle you have, what version, etc., etc. And you have a cluster. Cluster is just a certain number of question pages. Why do you use cluster? For example, you have 4 or 5 pages of content that you want to give your students, and after that you would like them to answer a question, but you don't want your students to answer the same question, all of them. You want to randomize this question. So you make a cluster, and the system will choose one question from that cluster, or you want them to answer one question, and if it's not a correct answer, you will show them another question from that cluster. In that case, you can control which group of questions they will get. Something like in a Moodle quiz, if you used any of them before. What is the most important thing most important thing that you have to do about the lesson? Lesson can have branches. So you can have one branch, for example, if you're talking about natural attractions in Slovenia, you can have it all in one lesson. Of course, you can divide it and you have a separate lesson, but let's say that you need to put them in one lesson. So you need to talk about mountains, you need to talk about lakes, about rivers, about caves, and you want them to be in a separate branch. Sometimes it's not easy for you to follow what the students need to do and where to go after some certain page. In that case, you need to go with this diagram. I'll show you here one that I made in PowerPoint, so it's really simple. And it's pretty much linear. You have introduction page with the content, page with the content, then a question. If you answer this question correctly, you go to the conclusion. If you're not, you're returning to a content and repeat some more that content, so you will be able to learn to answer this question correctly. So it's really the simplest one. You maybe even don't need diagram for this one. And here you have one more complicated that you can write in hand. So you don't have to use some kind of software to make this diagram. You can just sketch it on a paper. You have some intro into your lesson, some content, and then you divide this lesson to 2 branches. One about mountains, one about lakes. You have some content, 1 page, 10 pages, whatever. Then you have some questions, and if they answer these questions correct, they go to another content. Or in a mountain case, if you don't give the correct answer, you go to additional content. So that's the page that you haven't been seen before, but you will see it if you don't know the answer to this question, not in other case. For lakes, if you don't answer correctly, you will go to the content that you have seen before about natural attractions, learn some more, and then go to this question again. It can be even more complicated, depending on what you need and what you want from this lesson. But please, before you start, before you go to Moodle and add this lesson activity, write it down. What do you want from your lesson? You have your outcomes in mind, you have your assessment methods in mind, your teaching goals, and everything else, everything is combined. And you write that lesson down. It's going to give you some certainty when you start to build your lesson, and you know what you need to do. You know what page links to another page, what to do after you get the right answer, after you get the wrong answer. It's going to be much, much easier if you have a picture like this prepared in advance. So as I said, a cluster is a group of question pages. What you need to do about cluster, you have to add a cluster, but you have to add an end of cluster so that the Moodle will know what is that group of questions and connect them to one cluster. This is a cluster that I prepared with 2 questions. So what is Postojna? And I will say mountain, submit. Okay, I got the response, think again. Okay, I will think again. I can only go to continue because in the settings of this lesson, I said that students can only try to answer a question once. You can, of course, change that. We will see settings right now. Now I have here, okay, and I will say it's castle, submit, and I was great. Now I jump to another content page about ending your lesson, which is really important if you want to mark your to give your students opportunity to mark, or for Moodle to mark them this lesson as finished. And also it's easier for students if they're learning some reading some materials from lesson to know when they hit the bottom, when they end. So make sure that you add an end of a lesson page. And this is some advices about how to use and how to generate a lesson. If you want some of these advices, we can share with you this lesson afterwards. But what is the most important thing about the lesson? Think in advance. So you have to know exactly what your lesson is going to look like before you open your computer and start doing it. That's the most important and the best advice I can give you. Okay, this is the page that shows us that we reached the end of lesson. In this case, students will know that they read all content pages and all the question, if you have question pages in your lesson. Okay, now we'll go to settings, and we go through the settings of a lesson, and I will give you some short insight what to use, what is recommendation, and what is, of course, not recommended to use if you want a great lesson. Okay, name and description, I don't think that I have to describe much more. Progress bar in display menu is something that I didn't have at this lesson. So you didn't have on the left side a menu with the content pages listed. If I say yes, I will just show you quickly. You get this, you get lesson menu, and it's really useful if students have to learn from it. But if you want your content page to stay hidden and you don't want your students to jump from one page to another, you will not show him this. As you can see, question pages are not listed here. So a student cannot approach a question from the menu, only from the pages that you planned on or you set in your lesson for him to approach. Okay, I'm coming back. Progress bar is an information for the students at the bottom of a lesson. How far did he go? How many of the questions he answered, etc., etc. You have even more things here to that you can choose, but it's not important for your lesson to be great with all of this. When you practice your lesson a bit and you think that you know the basics, then you open all of this, show more links and try some other things. A link to next activity is really, really great. It can be really useful. For example, if your students finished a lesson about natural attractions, then you directly link them to another lesson that you want them to follow this one. So they don't need to search your course and try for themselves what is another lesson that they will need to learn, but you show them in this way. This is important to set maximum number of answers. So this has two purposes. One is number of buttons that you can choose for each content page. You saw on my pages there are 2, but actually in the settings I could give them 4, because here I set 4 as a limit. But also this is a number of answers in a multi-choice questions. So you will be given 4 of empty slots to give your answers that the students will choose from. So here you can choose which number. Of course, you don't have to use them all. You give the maximum number of answers here, and you use on each page or each question as much as you need at that time. You can, of course, for like any other activity in Moodle, you can set dates that this lesson is available from and until some other dates, and how many minutes someone is going to have for reading and finish the whole lesson. You can also protect it with password. This offline using, be very careful if you need to try this. It's not for beginning. So sometime after you after you're already more experienced in a lesson. What about students' review? If you want your students to go through the lesson again, so they finished it once and you want them to be able to read it another time to learn from it, yes, you will choose yes in this drop-down menu. If you're not, if this was a one-time lesson, you will of course say no. As I told you before, when I had that question about postojna, system didn't repeat that question. I couldn't answer it once more because here I said that there is no possibility for the students to try a question again. Maybe you can set it to yes, and then you try to, and then you set the number of attempts for each questions the students can make. Then you choose what to do after someone gives you a correct answer. So you can follow a lesson path. That's when you have your lesson planned and set it as you want it. So you choose which pages students will see after the correct, or you can leave Moodle to show an unseen page or unanswered page for the students if you don't have a lesson path designed already. As all other activities, you can grade this lesson, or you can or you can say that this is just a practice lesson. In that case, it won't appear in a gradebook. So you won't have this lesson in a gradebook, but you can also have question pages in this lesson. Nevertheless, it's not going to be graded. Of course, you can grade it with some value, with a scale, or you can write a text, a feedback. If you want your students to retake this lesson, you choose this yes from this drop-down menu. It's different from this review, as you can see. This is just to read and see the content, and this is to take some questions again. And it will take into the consideration if you have multiple attempts, you can use the best one, or you can use the mean. And you can have, common module settings about groups, so we don't have to talk about that. It's common in every activity. But I wanted to give you some information about this completion tracking and access restrictions, because these settings are great for formative assessment in Moodle, not just in a lesson, but if you use any kind of activity. How? It's easy for you. You don't have to do anything after you design an activity. So now you have a lesson. You want your students to answer 4 questions correctly, and then you will make this. Let's see, when conditions are met, you will say, okay, this lesson is finished. And then you go to another lesson or quiz or some kind of resource and say, okay, when this lesson is finished, you can access this quiz. In that case, students will have their own path of learning path, or they have their own intensity of learning. So if they are better students, if they learn faster, they will finish this much faster than other students. When they finish one lesson, the other will will be open to them, or they will be able to access a quiz, etc., etc. But if they don't, for example, for those students who are not finished this lesson yet, maybe you can prepare some additional materials that they can read and finish lesson successfully, and then they will access another activity. So that's the information for students. Okay, you didn't finish this. That means that you're not ready for another step, for another activity. You need to learn more without you even need to say that, because the Moodle will say it for you. You need to learn this and finish this before you can move on. So you can choose, you can use this in the whole Moodle for all resources, for all activities, and it's a really, really powerful tool once you once you learn how to use it and how it can be helpful for your teaching. So here is where you make your conditions when this activity will be finished, and access restrictions is where you can say, okay, this lesson is going to be available only when you get a grade from this quiz, or your user profile is Tea Čičko, or you belong to a particular group, or after a certain date. You can make that someone can access it after this previous lesson is finished, or the date has come when you need to let them read something else, even if they didn't finish everything. Okay, so this is just about okay, we have competencies. I'm not sure that you have it in your Moodle, so I won't talk about them right now. I don't have here learning outcomes in these settings because we didn't make import any learning outcomes in this course. That's why you don't have that section, but actually you can have learning outcomes in a lesson as any other activity in Moodle. Okay, so this is something about a quick overview about settings. Okay, we will just choose this one. Okay, so now you learn how to make a lesson settings, and then you have to make some pages. You go to this tab, edit, and now you can see, you see the title of a page, you see the content, and you see the jumps. You see the name, how you named your buttons and where that button will go. So first button is previous page, and it will go to previous page. It's not really something smart to do. Whatever kind of names you choose for your lesson, just make sure that they're all the same style at each page. So if you use previous page and next page, don't use click here on the second page. So use the same style in all pages that you use in one lesson. You can, I will show you right away, you can name your buttons as you like. You can page your button like lesson plan, go to lesson plan, and someone will click on go to lesson plan. So as you can see, you can edit your pages from here. You can copy, you can preview them, or you can, of course, delete them. So it's really useful to see what have you prepared. You see all your pages here, and sometimes it can be, if you have a great number of pages, it can be really, really complicated to go through this view. What I wanted to show you here is this cluster. So you add a cluster, and it's going to be presented like this. So you have a cluster. It's page that you don't make yourself, but the Moodle will make it as you add them. And then you have inside its cluster, you have these two multi-choice questions. And here you can all see answers that they will be given to students, and what kind of response, what kind of feedback you want to give them, depending on the questions that they choose. This is another question in a cluster, and this is the end of a cluster. So this is a group of questions that they will, the Moodle will use at this particular place. So after this cluster page and before ending your lesson page, you have a few questions that they will show to students depending on their correct or incorrect answer. If they answered the first time correctly, they will not see a second or third question. They will go to this ending your lesson page right away, right after the first question. Okay, you can have even one simplest view. It's collapsed. You see the title, the page type, where your jumps are on this page, and you can see some actions as you've seen before. And before or after a certain page, you can add another one if you like, as you can see here in this drop-down menu. So I will now show you a report, and you will see this for all your students. And if you have essays that you used in your lesson, you can assess them here. We didn't use essays, so it's not listed here, but if you have, this is the place where you will find them and where you will be able to assess them. Okay, and now I will go back to here, and I will show you how to make some pages. Here we have a picture and we have some text. Next page, we have another lake. So it's just the beginning of a lesson. Let's make some more content, and let's make some questions. So we can choose this one, and now I will add a content page. So you have, it's not logical, of course, because you should have add a cluster before add an end of a cluster, but that's Moodle. So you can add a cluster and end. You can add a branch. Add a content page. So what can you choose here? You have page title, and we will say here. Okay. You can have, you can put some videos, pictures, text. You can edit your text like in any other Moodle. You can choose how to arrange your buttons. Do you want them to be one next to another or one below another? And do you want to display this page in a menu? So sometimes you would like to display all other pages except this one or except 2 of the pages or whatever. You can choose for each page, would you like to display it in menu or not. And now you have a description and jump. Description is basically the name of the first button that will be shown to students. So see something about it. Okay, and I will choose. So as you can see, you can name these buttons as you like. And you have 4 buttons because we set in the settings of a lesson, we said there is going to be 4 answers in multi-choice questions and 4 these buttons available. You can, of course, use 4 or just 2 as I would use right now, or you can increase that number in settings and have some more buttons in case you need. And that's it. It's not really difficult. So you have page title, page content, you have named your buttons, and you can save your page. Now you have Kranjska Gora page. It's not really full of content, but okay. And now you see what we have prepared. Of course, it's not really, it's not the same as here. So when you're learning, when you're making your lesson, please make sure that it's the same style. If you want your buttons to be named like this, like something that students will know where they are going to, which is recommended, you write something like this. Bled Lake, see something about Bled or anything else. When you just say previous and next page, they don't know what to expect and what's the next page they will see. And sometimes it's important for them to know where they're going. Okay, and now we'll have a question page after this one. Now you choose what kind of question would you like to use. I will use multi-choice. Add a question page, expand all, so it's easier. And now we'll see what we will ask our students. Okay, let's think about something. Learning Center. Here at page contents, you write your question. Is and you give some of the questions. By default, it's only one question that is correct. If you want more than one, you check this box about multiple answer. But now I'll need just one correct answer. It's important for you when you use your lesson in your teaching to give this response as detailed as you can, because it's going to be feedback for your students when they, if they answer this correctly, it's okay because they know the answer and you don't have to write, sorry, this is not try again. Yes. I'm sorry. It's not important for you to write a detailed response, but if they chose an incorrect answer, then it's important for you to tell them something about their mistake, maybe why they, if you know the misconceptions about something, you will know your content better than I do. Maybe they will mix it with something else, etc., etc. So you give them as detailed response, your feedback as you can for this incorrect answers. Okay, so if someone chooses 10 years old, which is not, and I will say here 0, that means it's not correct. Where should I let him? I will take him here, and he'll have to read about Legbohin one more time. But if he choose this one, I will say, okay, go to end of a lesson, this, and give one point, which is information for a Moodle that this is a correct answer. And I will not fulfill any other. As you can see, we have 4 answers as we set in the settings of a whole lesson. We will save page. We see here the page title, we have the question, and we have answers. 10 years, which is not correct, and we have 14 years, which is correct, and jumps where someone is going to need to go after these pages. And now we have the preview. We'll start from the beginning. Okay, this is the first one, the second one, the newest one we did right now. We have even more interesting buttons than before, previous and next. This is much better. Okay, and what did we do? Next, here, and I still cannot get my question. So what did I did wrong? Go back here, and let's see. There is no button that is going to go to this page. So choose the page that you want to link to this question. This is why it's important to make that diagram I talked to you about at the beginning. So right now, I didn't do anything about connecting this question page with other content that I made before. And it's much easier for you if you have diagram, then you follow it and you know on which page you have to make a link to another content page or question page. And these kind of mistakes are going to be pretty rare. Of course, it's possible, it happens sometimes, but not as much as if you do even the simplest lessons without that diagram. And as I said, you can sketch it on a paper. You don't have to use any kind of software for that. So I will go here and I will have content 3 question and go to E-learning Centre. Let's see if this was correct. Okay, first one, second one. Okay, now we have a question, and actually we are able to answer this question. And we reach the end of a lesson. Okay, this is my 45 minutes. I'm sure that I gave you lots of information, and it's not easy to follow all this at once and to remember everything. And it's okay if you didn't remember anything. It's really a bunch of information at a short time. And as I said, if you have any questions, you can ask me now, or you can contact us later today, later any day you would like, and we'll try to help you. In the meantime, you can practice it here at this Moodle demo site that you can use as a teacher and the students to see when you prepare something, did you prepare it well, and how it's going to be presented to your students.